Okay, great. We'll call the meeting to order then. And we'll start with public comment. Is anyone there from the public?
Hi, I'm Abby Lawler Morris. Some of you, I used to be on the board. That's the last time I said we in person pre-pandemic. When I rolled off, we were just getting used to the whole thing. So I just came to I haven't cut out with you guys in a long time. I'll see what you guys are doing. Also, we are trying to revitalize the legal reading group, which for the last several years has been posting everything. Otherwise, we haven't done much. So we're trying to bring the volunteer group back. But everyone get on our email list so you know what we're doing, what we need. Yeah, I just I don't know. Again. Morgan is our other legal green member that is attending this hearing.
You want to ask if you get these one up.
Andrew, I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was just asking Bonnie if we want to ask either John or Morgan if you have public comment. I can't get there.
This is John Nunn here.
John, do you have any public comment that you'd like to make?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right.
No comment.
All right, thanks. And Morgan, anything from you? Silence is golden. All right. I think we're done with public.
All right. All right. Well,
Sorry, can you hear me? Oh.
Oh, wait, Morgan's there. Morgan's there.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm driving home. I had to just park the car real quick. No, I was just excited. I volunteer with Levo Green, and so I was just excited to listen into your meeting, try to see if there's any place we can collaborate more, where you need some extra volunteers or some extra like public input. In particular, I'm excited to hear about the sidewalk expansion policy. I think sidewalk policy is kind of backwards. Like the amount we pay to maintain the sidewalk and install it. We don't do that for the street. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys are thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. All right, Megan, now it's yours.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you guys, and I assume everybody would agree with me that we're happy to collaborate with Levo Green. So I think that's great. Next on the agenda is the approval of the September minutes. Does anyone have any comments or make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the 2022 minutes.
I second.
All right. Next is our junior board member report. Do we have any report this week or this month?
No, Felix was not able to come. He had, I don't.
Okay. Next is the school board liaison report.
That's me. I'm Melinda Burdick. I am school board liaison. I don't have a very large report other than Shayna Bodie and I took a nice long walk one day and we talked all about the PTA having a more prominent role in coordinating some green and sustainable ideas among the school students. And she was, I gave her a number of names to reach out to. We defined my role as being the person who takes information of what you all are doing back to the school board and reports it. So I can express, a connection to the school board and to the community that way. And so we talked a little bit about that, and I think she was is a doer and a go-getter and just gonna launch into a few ideas. That's all I have. They have a solution for that, yes.
There was a solution to that first.
They have a person. There were some connections that needed to be made. But it's John, it's the same person that was, I'm failing to remember his last name. But he's going to be a bridge to cover into possibly a different permanent person. I think he's somewhat temporary, but he's in that position to see us through, some evaluations that have to be done of the school, food systems and planning and like daily operations. So yes, a very capable person is in place. I'm not certain of the permanency of this person. He's pretty.
Megan, it's yours.
All right, thank you. It was a little bit hard to hear Jen, so I just wanted to make sure nobody else in the room was saying anything. All right. The next item on the agenda is ESB business, so I'm gonna turn it over to Sean to go over the sidewalk policy idea that he has.
So the idea here, the sidewalk expansion policy, specifically sidewalk expansion, not general sidewalks. So I want to make that pretty clear. This is about maintenance of existing sidewalks. This is about installing new sidewalks where they don't currently exist. The current policy was adopted in August of 2013. And as it states right now, residents who would like municipalities' assistance in installing a sidewalk on their block, basically the process is gathering signatures from residents who are interested in having this happen on their block. They need to gather at least 70% of the residents that would be affected by this. There's higher priority for those to gather 100% of signatures. There's also a number of other factors that come into prioritizing how these projects will be prioritized. So, you know, if they are on a safe walking route, they get higher priority. They're connected. There are some existing sidewalks, and we're connecting those sidewalks that gets higher priority score, et cetera, et cetera. The basic changes that I would propose to this would be that really, there is a cost upfront to the homeowner as part of this. They cover a portion of it. That's spelled out in the policy, and the municipality covers another portion of it. The current policy has it such that the homeowner has to agree that replacement is entirely on them. So if the sidewalk is torn up for some reason, wear and tear, whatever it is, it's on them to replace it. So the two major changes that I would propose to this is that we just can open it up a little bit more and not have to go so fine grained with an entire block has to propose something. I understand this may pose a lot more logistical challenge to trying to prioritize these or get them installed or whatever. But you know, basically, we get a sidewalk. It's that carrot for the neighbors get the sidewalk. It's that carrot for the other neighbor. So if somebody is so inclined to do so, I don't think we should have to push for the whole block to get the sidewalk done at once.
Is it block or street?
And not
The street. So I mean, if you have a street with 100 houses on it, it's just corrections 75%.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the
Yes.
that can make a big difference for a lot. So for example, it's 100 houses on the street. You can get 75% of the signatures. We would go in there. And there's a couple steps after that. The police would then go out and determine, you know, level of safety, safe walking routes and things like that. And if we determine we can put sidewalks on one side the whole way or both sides the whole way. I don't think it really matters. You know, obviously it comes down to the price, but you know, a block, I guess, is you can have straight up block. It's
Yeah, I mean, a block could be 10 houses. Street I live on because it's a long, you know, it's probably. it's 150 houses. So it's a much, but block by block wouldn't be a bad thing, I'm sure. Okay.
So yeah, and then basically the other portion of this is, as you are able to gather more support for your block, we would then have kind of a sliding scale of how much support the municipality would provide. So if it's a single homeowner, we put it at, you know, maybe I put in some random numbers, but it could be very different. But let's say 20 or 30% is covered by the municipality. If it's only one homeowner, we get to 5, you know, there's a, we drop up, or we bump it up to 40%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As you get more, you would municipality takes more of the share for it. The other part, the document that I sent around basically just has a number of tweaks and updates, putting in some kind of at least dated provisions, like what might the expected cost of this project be to a homeowner. If the sidewalk goes through its useful life, whatever we deem the useful life of the sidewalk to be, then we may be able to provide assistance at that point as well, rather than it being completely on the homeowner to replace it. If it's been 20 or 30 years, you know, if it's been through a useful life for a sidewalk, then it's fully on the hook and replacing it. Those are the big two ideas there.
What happens if the home has sold in 20 years by the time it's time for maintenance?
That's on the homeowner at that point.
So is there a plan that gets transferred with the transfer of ownership of the home?
I think at that point, when the home changes hands, it's whatever the normal statute would be for a sidewalk or a business sidewalk. Which actually I wasn't able to find down.
What?
Do you know where it's sidewalk? I see them around replacing sidewalks. We have ours done in our own community where they came out, they aren't ones, you have the alternative. You have the option to have others replaced. It's great, but I'm pretty sure that's because of municipal trees causing them to buckle on. I was actually surprised most of these. But yeah, is there anything that precludes somebody from going and let's say the rest of my block doesn't want sidewalks, can you go in and just stop it?
No, the policy very top of it says this doesn't cover anybody that wants to fully take on for themselves.
Just
Yeah.
It's more for this. It's like a system program almost saying like, you know, it's really targeted for it could, there's a possibility of an individual really wants one. See how that moves on like for an entire street. It's incentivization, right?
Does new construction have to?
That actually was my suggestion. I'm actually glad the school board is here because I would very selfishly, I admit, prioritize where there is no sidewalk whatsoever around schools. Like there is an entire section cut off from our school. Or it's south. Once you cross Connor Road, there's only a sidewalk for a short period. There's no sidewalk option at all.
Actually, that new house that's being built on me, so I was.
That's what she.
From Dean's. That because of this new construction.
If it is on, maybe I'm on.
But I think that's why the other.
Although that was also.
Does that neighborhood have a safe walk program or is like police come and talk about the safe walking route for the students?
There is a safe walking route, but it leads directly to streets that have no size. And it.
Yeah, but actually, safe walk routes are on Amazon. School district. Website. There are very few streets that are not sidewalk. When I look. So I mean, it's very.
And many kids walk the closest route regardless of whether it's a walk route.
I mean, I would argue if we're going to be a walking district. We actually start really walking a walk rather than.
I believe also that the safe walking routes can be cover elementary schools. I don't believe they cover the high school. They very, very section of high school is not across the, that's across the area. That's just,
Greeners.
that's fine. Cedar and Cochran.
There's at least 4 of them within that half mile radius.
But yeah, so. To the expansion policy specifically, this is just like one small chunk of, so the pieces that I didn't have any data to pull is, are people taking advantage of this currently? What do we have budgeted for it? Is there a budget sitting there for this expansion policy that is being used? Those would be open questions
When no one is taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have money, we put money into sidewalks every year, the replacement, so conceptually, right, that money, there would be capacity to, support. I think, as I think about this issue, right, it's an interesting challenge. When I think about this one, I mean, we always have to go back to the private property, so we're incentivizing people to undertake something on their property, as opposed to being public property. The next thing is, how do we think about our streets more broadly? A safe walking route is the street. There's no cut routes. So the paper streets that people use are not safe walking routes. So how do we think about our transportation network more broadly? And so again, as I think about it more broadly, which is why I really push the street stuff, is we need to have an active transportation plan that really says, okay, what really is a safe walking route, right? In a more holistic framing, it's not just about, let's say, the street that people can walk on, and it's walking private property. What actually would constitute that, and recognizing that we don't have them, right, in a lot of places. But then also recognizing that a sidewalk isn't necessarily the only solution to a safe walking route, right? A street that is designed to require people to go less than 50 miles an hour conceptually could be a safe walking route also, even if there aren't sidewalks. Right. Well, but again, it's one of those situations, right, where if I have a street design where people have to go around bollards or trees or things that were traditionally in the public right of way, right, that could be a safe walking route, right? Because exactly. So there are different ways to think about this. So for me, a sidewalk is only one piece of this much broader puzzle around what is safe walking, and what is what are we trying to think about long term. That said, obviously sidewalks are important, right? Especially on heavily traveled routes where that is the option, right? If it's an emergency route, where it's a major thoroughfare, I need sidewalk, especially if it's heavily traveled. So how do I incentivize that? So I think for me, moving this policy forward is an interesting approach, right? I mean, it's how do we incentivize even more robustly? But I'm also cognizant of, I'm not really worried about some places, right? I want to incentivize neighbors, right? I want to incentivize, right? Some of these places are really heavily traveled. So I think that's the question in my mind, right? Is how does this fit? And then again, I think it becomes like as I said, I'm sorry, I haven't engaged on this one since we talked. What's the financial model, right? How do we think about that, and what is the kind of burden that the general taxpayer is going to have to carry to incentivize behavior, for individual property owners? I know when I was campaigning, I knocked on doors in Lindendale, and I had a lot of people, but that'd be great. And then one person goes, no. I was like, okay, I guess that's dead. because they didn't want to maintain it. They didn't want to sweep it, they didn't want to, shovel it, they didn't want to replace it. Okay, well, so that's a whole other set of problems, right? This might not actually make the difference. So how do we recognize that it's sweeping or it's shoveling, right? I don't want to shovel. Okay, well, what's the solution to that? Because frankly, I suspect that's actually more of an incentive. If we could figure out a way to, sweep snow off sidewalks, that would probably be more of an incentive to say, yeah, we'll call it a sidewalk.
That partial solution.
Well, right, well, and actually, we've talked about getting one of those little, sweeper trucks, that's got the little blow, thing on it, on the front.
It's electric.
But yeah, right, one step at a time, right, but we talked about getting one up here. Right, and that's expensive, right, it's expensive to do that, and it's expensive to have employees, who are doing it. So actually, you can have people who are like crossing guards, drive the little stuff out, I mean, fine. But that's a, it's like driving. Anyway, but that's a whole different model, right? So I don't honestly know that this is gonna make a difference. I hope it would, but I suspect that there's some of these other steps that we would have to build on also.
Yeah. I mean, my hope in that specific case, right? You got 99% of the block and there was one holdout, it's the sidewalk going and say, well, okay.
Right.
Or they're just gonna have their one path, right, in their yard. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, but it's like, for me, it's not specific road, it's a sale that I see all the time, it's between Jefferson and high school, or between Main Park. Right, and there's cars parked on both sides, there's no sidewalk, people are either in the road or walking through the grass. It's
Great place for sidewalk.
Is there any zoning difference between residential and commercial units?
This policy is specific to residential.
A little tricky with that one, state road. So. Yeah, you have to say, you have to do the mighty place on
Sidewalk.
Not something the other half.
Right. Is there a minimum number of sidewalks on a street that you would consider like a green light versus, what's one sidewalk at the end of Vernon Drive and one person puts it on the sidewalk and nobody else does? Well, that's just pointless.
And I mean, there's a fair number of those.
But you would still say that's a good idea. We'll have a sidewalk there.
I think if it incentivizes others, I think it could be. I mean, part of it is how many people knew that this policy exists. I knew it existed because I could find it searching around, but probably the vast majority of people don't know it exists. And if they did, they looked at it and said, that's too onerous. I'm not gonna
The
go
policy that the district or the municipality would help you to be.
So bulbs
So
are.
no, just even adding one in general, right? Probably most people don't know it exists. If they do, they said, oh, I need 3/4 of my neighbors to agree to this.
So what kind of costs when you just go in the general average pot size? What would the burden be on? Do we have any idea what we're talking about?
I did a rough back of the envelope calculation,
Yeah.
which is probably completely wrong. I think it was around $5,000 for the total project that feels low to me. So it was between $11 and $13 per square foot times 5-foot sidewalk. So around $55 to $65 per foot of sidewalk. On property lines. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's how we probably could get the numbers. Which would be a great thing to have. That this states that it's $90 per linear foot, 2013, so that's current.
Anything to incentivize walking or driving.
Right, and I think the other thing too as well is building on the individual kind of placement, is say the long range, long-term planning with mixed plans. You may have 20 houses on the street and there's 5 existing. And over the course of 10 years, 6 people do it. You have 11 sidewalks, over the course of 20 more years, it then becomes that you complete the length. I mean, these houses have been here for 8, 9 years. They stand for another 8, 9 years. They're even complete. So there was a policy in Cranberry when I was working there, missing this program. We evaluated throughout the municipality. Cranberry is nowhere near walkable at all. Now, pride themselves as a wonderful community, but a lot of new development, I should say, all of the new developments required sidewalks, but the existing development, we like to complete the missing links. Separate developments don't connect to each other, so we found connections that would go with, certain challenges, things like that. We would say that's an easier project, harder project. And then we would have development projects like Frito-Lay. They expanded their warehouse and made them put sidewalk along their frontage. They told us that goes to nowhere. I said, well, your neighbors that you connect into said the same thing 20 years ago. Sidewalks going into nowhere. Now created that and so on and so forth down there. So there's some reason to kind of individual placement, but I think it almost can be like an amendment to that and saying, hey, this is an incentivized program to do the whole street, but if you're a fan of just your house only, go for it. Because you see a lot of homeowners should change, so give me an option.
I think, yeah. And timing wise, who knows on anything, but I felt like this was with complete streets being on the docket for the council, this is a very nice follow-up to just saying, hey, by the way, we have this policy that exists, you should avail yourself. And we're gonna tweak it in these ways to make it a little better. That's thinking.
Progress, operation, school district. One of the boards is also one of the boards from the commission. I'll have to look it up. I do.
Technically, I had my time, but there was a project, a whole block of North Meadow Cross some years ago, in like the Lincoln neighborhood. They put sidewalks in, it was an entire block. I don't know how that project came about. I don't know if anyone knows.
That was this program.
Oh, is it? Okay, I know it was like, yeah, it was like an entire block, and maybe it was 6,000, 5,000 or something.
So have there been so few projects that you can do this?
That was, I think, my knowledge, that was the one.
Oh.
This policy in place. And just to be transparent, there is one, there's a request, they're working on something right now, so for another location, but we'll see. We're working on precedent on that, so they're in the petition stages right now, so we'll see, but we are definitely. I think they're able to get enough signatures to make great, it's 16 houses, and it connects a there's a piece, there's a piece of sidewalk, and then when it reaches, I can't remember the main road, both sides on the main road or something. So it's a very small victories. They can gather the support, we got for it, so.
To answer your question, it's the Mount Lebanon Police Department. Who heads up the safe walking program for the school. It's one of their connected services to the school district. Just the municipality, how we can students care for sidewalks, school sidewalks on the
Yeah, that's what we're both talking about, this corner line.
That's exactly the question.
Woodlands is not safe to walk on. And
To answer your question, I don't know if any changes where,
this year in front of the municipal yard on that side of the street.
That's going to be a gravel walk.
Oh, but at street access or just a county?
No, it's going to go down the street. It's going to go from Evelyn down to the where the park is, where you go in, where the fire stations. Don't believe.
So that's what I'm getting at, to the homeowner. The intersection he was just talking about, there are really sidewalks connecting it, but there are, Mount Lebanon properties in the middle of freeway intersections, that don't have sidewalks or crosswalks to them, that kids would cross on the safe walk route. That was the reason for this question. It's one that I was thinking about as well. It's Mount Lebanon property, but doesn't.
So Rudy said it costs the municipality $48 per linear foot because the foot will fly. But if a homeowner wanted to do it on their own, it would be 1.5 to 2 times, because we're getting that good that economies of scale. So
Also, since you take advantage of one person power.
So it sounds like there's some refining to do. And there's some locations for municipal properties that you're curious about.
I would highly invite you to mark them on the map.
That's exactly what.
Yeah.
See if the box comes up. I just went through that today, and it's great to see a lot of like spots already there.
Yeah, honestly, I think this program, right, I think looking at it, makes sense. For me, ultimately, I think we need an active transportation plan in place, right? It's gonna actually, because to a certain extent, right, there are streets where, I suspect, right, if it's an emergency route, right, we need that full width. We can require something. It's not fun to go through that for people. Right, and I think there needs to be carrots, but, or there needs to be thought about that, and we need to be really diligent about that type of decision. Right now, there is the framework for that decision, right? It's just,
There is actually.
well, there is, but it's one of those, go.
Don't want to take it. Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
yeah, go convince 3 commissioners. Yeah.
I understand that. It's strong. I think as far as people needing to dye test, alter properties, so. And I. We require
Right.
to do these.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's the point, right? But again, for me, it's about how do you create the framework and how do you create the scene next one, right? If it's an emergency route and I need with, then maybe I require sidewalks. Right. So I think that's, how do we incentivize? Again, for me, partly it's helping people install it, but then it might be, help people sweep them, right? So I think there are more pieces to the puzzle, but it seems like a lot of people. Look at.
I need to send an email, and it doesn't really relate to DSP business to the school board member here. I had talked to your field at the volunteer dinner. Spring, I guess that was. And I had talked about the possibility of a some angel type program for to have some volunteers and centralized support to be able to have sidewalk shoveling volunteer for people who need. I participated in it, my MK covered all of Allegheny County for winter, and then it went to just the state of Wisconsin, so it wasn't really much anymore. So I did talk to him about that, and he seemed interested in it. The school board would play, the school district could play a role.
There already is one,
Okay.
as far as high school students earn volunteer hours in school hours, as well as community service out of school hours. And there's a way to sign up, and there's a like a Google sheet that's like all these opportunities, and some of them are shoveling, and they get in touch with a person, and I would have to see like how they do that. But I know my kids will go on and look at what their volunteer service hour options are, and then they'll sign up for some things to do that. And it's harder to get into school service hours than it is to get out of school. Anything is pretty much out of school service. We don't get paid for it. But there is a snow shoveling. I think we could encourage
Drop
them.
the environment share, so it's just 10 hours. That doesn't seem to be again.
Oh, really? That's changed.
Yep, just this. Which is kind of nice.
So programs are gonna be hurting if they're required. They really benefit from having students show up to run the little kiddie pool games and at the fairs. Magic shows. And all that stuff. Okay, well, cool. I can look and see that they make sure they have a snow shoveling contingent of kids, but how would we connect them to the need?
Yeah, I mean, the general idea was basically having done two Google forms, so I need help. I'm willing to help. Actually, one back end. We can rally some business community support, donate some salt or something like that, so we're gonna pay for it. That was the general idea. Basically just doing some national, oh, this person. There you go. Same. That's as far as we've gotten. Well, I haven't, no, that's fine. It's in their story. I just.
Angels and Snow Angels program, the brand, so I can talk to them, see if there's anything that there's any kind of certification or. But we just administer, right? Exactly, yeah, right? It's.
Honestly, if we got somebody who put in sidewalks for this program, like, I'd volunteer myself.
Yeah,
You know,
like,
so
and that's why I do want to make it not something that's school district specific, because I'm not getting troublesome.
But I think particularly in KJ, this program. I think. Great to help all of our neighbors. That gets to the inside. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting exploration. Side of this is right, how you help people. Maintain, safe sidewalk. I think it's all yours.
I had a question on the sidewalk expansion. I was having a little bit of trouble hearing, so you may have covered this. I apologize if you did, but it sounds like we were maybe kind of talking about making landowners aware of this existing policy and how we can, potentially make some updates to it, but also the safe walking routes and how important that is. And that to me seems more like a targeted area where, we could focus on certain routes that would get a lot more cars off the road because it'd be safer for kids to walk to school. And were you saying that, if that's the focus, that like a targeted safe walking route, for example, there would be a different avenue we should take than simply updating the sidewalk expansion policy?
Another question to me. Yeah,
Anybody, I guess.
Well, I guess my take is, to a certain extent, look, if we can just look at this policy and incentivize people, right? That's one piece of the puzzle. The safe walking routes discussion, personally, I don't want to open that up until we have an active transportation plan, right? That's a whole exercise in and of itself. Right, that really needs a kind of comprehensive look. And trying to do that one off without some of these other pieces, I think is a mistake. So I think, trying to, see if we can't find ways to improve this policy, right, incrementally makes sense. See if we can't find opportunities for snow angels and leaf angels to coordinate that, makes sense. But some of the more structural components. Let's hold off on that one, in my opinion.
Okay. That makes sense. So I guess, Sean, with all of that in mind, I mean, is there, what do you see as the next steps, or do you need any assistance from anyone else in the ESB? Is there anything we can do to help?
I'm not quite sure what the next should be. I don't know if there's a proposal policy or something that you would take to.
Why don't we talk?
Yeah.
Let's button down whatever the final thing is, and then vote next meeting, and if everybody likes it, then we'll take. I see a hand raised. Morgan?
Oh,
Oh, she has a question.
Yeah. No, that's John. Just like a lot of talk. Morgan, I'm sorry, did you have a question? There you are.
you're pretending, there you go. Sorry, since you called my name, I did have a question. It was kind of hard to hear, Sean, on the phone. Was part of the, consideration was when a house is sold or a property is sold, then build a sidewalk?
Not as part of the policy, no.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. All right, Megan, it's yours.
All right, does anybody have any other ideas? That the next item I had on the agenda was just, we talked about quite an extensive list of ideas at our last meeting. And I was curious if anybody had any other thoughts on policy issues that they'd like to take up or start to move forward, even if it's just, preliminary idea of something you might want to start working on. Does anyone on the ESB have any other ideas?
And two in particular, that I think we should look into in part because of where we were going with CAP. That's EV and solar. I don't know that we have any EV policy, or ordinances.
But stop.
Right.
How are they being, did changes from solar?
Yeah, again, I know that the plot went through solar, right? The permitting process is relatively streamlined already for solar. So I think the question from solar perspective is really, do you want to incentivize people put solar? And from an EV perspective, it's an interesting question. I'm personally residential, right? That's, I don't know really what we do there for multifamily. Is it different?
That's exactly what I was referring to, multi-unit.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna get growing interest in that. As to not live it anymore. Staying for a while. So that would be my interest as well. Maybe what I'll do is reach out through Connect and find out. We didn't come across anything in the worked on the CAP. Policy recommendation.
I'm sure relatively simple Google search for
Yeah.
multifamily EV charging municipal policies would probably turn up some decent examples.
Well, and I'm sure.
really, there's not really incentives for it, but our multitude of gas stations and kind of like picture. We actually passed, kind of, the ordinances to allow them to be charging stations. I mean, there's new sheets that we can build on. Big section of the superchargers. And it,
I heard there's a Tesla supercharger station. Is it there already?
Yeah,
well, the new Tesla dealership that's going down. By South Avenue.
but, yeah, but, it's an interesting, right? I've always kind of assumed that ultimately charging stations will be where the gas stations are now, right? That's kind of the, at least the target state in my mind, but, any municipal charging is really just the interim, right? The transitional tool, as opposed to kind of a long-term infrastructure play. Yeah, but I don't know about our policies around gas stations. No idea, right? So that's something to look at and say, make sure that, it's a no-go, good go, aren't hampered by out there doing, but are they just not hampered? And then multifamily is obviously there's a discussion.
Reading about parking structures. Either municipal or private.
Where are you working? Where are you working with charging stations? So, municipal,
I'm not worried about the gallery as our hospital. Incentives for them.
Yeah, especially in St. Clair, any place where people are parking for a long period of time. And the reason that I'm saying this is that I don't think it's gonna switch to gas stations. I think it's gonna switch to where your parking is. And the reason, and parking the longest during the day, the reason I say that is because our grid is terrible. And if you switch to more renewables, you need a way to even out the demand. And one way that is at least suggested is it's storing it in your car when you're at work during the day. Drive your car home, plug your car, or plug your house into your car. You actually drain your car. Because you can charge more during the day.
that's an interesting point.
Now. Just build more capacity in the system.
That's a whole other, that's a whole other scale of work that has to be
Yeah,
done.
that's beyond the scope.
No, but to your point about, right, privately owned parking lots, I think it's an interesting one. I don't think, don't. It's an area we're looking at. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. But again, how do we incentivize St. Clair or the gallery or right, that property? You were putting in X number of parking spots to be required to have a certain number of return.
Yeah, I'd be less concerned about St. Clair than this, it's like dropping the fees that they want to charge on there. So they're probably going to be employees. Maybe.
Yeah, but I
As an experience, perhaps. And then also so generally people who work in this downtown area, uptown area, where they park.
yeah, they're in the garages or there's service lots. So. Yeah, more charging on the roadmap.
Excuse me, please. Hi. I've had my hand up for a while and I apologize. It is very hard to hear people when they talk softly. I just wanted to reiterate what I think I heard, and that is that we are trying to incentivize stations where EVs can be charged. Is that what I heard? We're thinking maybe the Galleria would be a site. We're thinking it's not going to be at regular gas stations. Am I hearing this correctly?
That was the general gist, yes, is that,
Okay.
and it's not necessarily that we want to incentivize the Galleria per se, but that type of facility. Yeah, how do we ensure that they, have some framework within which they're thinking and hopefully encouraged to install EV charging?
Okay. And someone said it would be affected by our switching to renewables. Did I don't know who said that.
Yeah, so the general, sorry, that's it.
No, it's fine. So the idea of long-term being that if you have a large number of people switching to renewables, you need a way to store energy
Yes,
that it does not
Yes.
currently exist.
correct.
One way is to store it in the car.
I like it. Yep.
I didn't come up with it. but-
It's worth repeating because I know batteries, the battery for solar power is hot item. So, okay, I apologize. When people talk softly and politely, it's hard to hear you. When everyone booms, it sounds awesome here in the hinterlands. So thank you. Carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the reminder.
So are you picking those up? You're gonna start digging in?
Yes,
All right.
I may argue about what's already out there. Particularly on the multi-dwelling. I know that there was one on the property. There's, that's size. Sorry, and it doesn't seem the pathway to getting that done. It's very clear. So we were talking that particular individual, I think, came and spoke to this board a few months ago, just about the challenges of, you lived in Mount Lebanon all your life, you installed a charger, you downsized, you retired and you moved to one of these outstanding high rises up here on Washington Road, and now you have nowhere to plug in. Streamlining that process so that property owners can easily navigate that would be fantastic.
Has Mount Lebanon worked it out, like Duquesne lights, EV teams?
The challenge in that situation was also the ballet type situation that they have going on. It seemed that the property owner was willing to potentially install, but they weren't sure about how to share, those maybe 2 or 3 stalls that they would put in initially and with their ballet, very tight restricted parking situations. I'll follow back up with them and see where that ended, but it's going, my opinion, being on.
I give it yours.
I was gonna add, I started to dig in a little bit on the stormwater. Unfortunately, I haven't put anything on paper yet or electronic substitute for paper. But I did find some good precedent for offsets. So that the municipality already offers rain barrel credit, which I didn't even know about until I.
No, but I didn't know that either.
Oh, okay. Oh. I think you can only claim one. I read this a while ago. But it's something like $50. It's a lot. But I'm using that as precedent because I think that there's room to use the stormwater fee to incentivize more privately owned and maintained infiltration areas.
Yeah, I honestly, and that's a topic that I've done a lot of thinking about. I think there are opportunities to incentivize behavior on private property to mitigate stormwater. It's going to be a topic that will continue to grow as we start to get a better handle on the infiltration and address it kind of in our storm system. And it becomes more and more clear where the private property challenges are. So again, if a resident, can put in a bioswale on private property and therefore mitigate, some of the stormwater intrusion into the sewer system, that's a benefit to everybody. It's a question of how do you incentivize it, right? It's really more of a legal structure question as to how do you do that, right? Is it, do you have a revolving loan fund that offers low interest loans? Do you offer a grant program? How do you fund that? Right? That's kind of the mechanism that I think it's there. It's just a question of how do you kind of stand it up and fund it, in my mind.
And even, I mean.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Because a bioswale on a mountain sounds like it's a challenge.
Right, exactly, yeah, and how do you define what is public benefit? Yeah, no, right, exactly,
2 or 3 neighbors together would really.
right, exactly,
I
yeah,
was
that's,
thinking more simply about permeable surfaces.
right, and that's probably a better example.
Because I think that's what people would do, whereas, something to put in actual LID infrastructure, that would be a little difficult. However, I guess what I was thinking is increase the stormwater fee, but then give people more opportunities to break it down.
Right. Well, we are increasing the
Well,
stormwater.
yeah.
With no opportunity to bring it down. But to your point, no, I agree. I think it's a question of how do you build the kind of tracking mechanism to maintain it, right? The method they use, right, with the EDU, the equivalent dwelling unit, right? It's a relatively robust, fair, but not overly complicated, mechanism, right?
I would say it's simple. Like,
Yeah. But and that's
there's no room for incentive,
right.
other
And
than the few that have.
yeah, so I guess the question is, how do you balance that with just the need to track and, quantify and, maintain all that data? How do you balance that, right? I mean, again, I agree, but it's like, that's a big, data task for a finance department. That's got 3 people, 4 people. 4. Right, so it's how do we do it, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, should we do it? No, I think it's more a question, how do you do it? In a way that's gonna get you.
Well, that there already are things in here for structures that need to be inspected routinely.
Right.
So
We
expanding it is.
Yeah,
is just a matter of
we have 2 inspectors. Yeah, right. Well, no, again, for me, it really just does boil down to kind of a passive question. Because if we're gonna do that type of thing, right, we have to fund actually supporting it, right? We have 2 inspectors that we're flat out, and they can't keep up. So having inspectors that are gonna go out and randomly inspect, right? The upkeep of a permeable surface, which is important, right? That's gonna fall completely off the radar initially, right? And I'm just throwing it out there. It's not as just like this, throwing up barriers, but it's like, how do we think through those mechanics and recognize that those types of programs make a lot of sense, but they also require a certain level of support, right, from staff and therefore capacity within the system to maintain it. So it's not just about incentivizing. It's not just about incentivizing residents, but it's also maintaining the funding. So the analysis, honestly, is if I raise the fee high enough,
That's what you're talking,
right?
It's where it's just becomes a matter of where you put the fee
Exactly.
and how do you sell it as an incentive program as opposed to a penalty program.
Yep, that sums it up.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting analysis, right? It's a good one. And frankly, I think again, we've got a 5-year horizon on this set of fee increases. But that doesn't mean, that we can't that build a better incentivized framework. Just means that we need to fund this because we're short key stormwater infrastructure now. But if we want to build an incentive program, right, that would be still on top of kind of work we're doing.
My school board time commitment is up. I will see you all another time. I did want to follow up if there's somebody interested in pursuing volunteer hours with the activities coordinator at school. I have her name and her number and contact. Is somebody want to do that? Oh, Brittany Pat, and then she, you can see on the school district website that there's lots of options there. There's kids decorating for the homecoming dance, and there's kids weeding and bird park, and there's kids doing all sorts of stuff. So she just puts up opportunities, they click on it, she builds forms. Thank you all.
All right,
See you next time.
all right, Megan, I think it's yours now.
Great. Well, I like all the ideas that I heard, and I think it'd be great if we can maybe get some email activity and some movement on these in the next couple weeks, and then discuss them again at the next meeting. So for the people that did bring up some ideas, feel free to send an email out to the ESB and let the group know if you want, particular help or support, or if you're have an update on what you're checking into. I think that'd be good to start moving on some of those. And that's all of the ESB business. So we're on to commission business. Andrew.
So we are near finalizing a police chief. That's just kind of FYIs. That process has been very, very robust. Yeah, it has been, thank you, Bonnie, for all of your work on that. It is, even the candidates said this was the most, robust process they've ever been through. A lot of efforts to ensure that there were lots of voices at the table. There was the initial, or the well, there was an initial review, then there was a candidate assessment center. It was a full day event. Then there was a opportunity for police officers to assess, and then the community forum. So way more transparent, way more robust in terms of engagement in this process than has been done in the past. It is not a norm here in this region at all. So I suspect that you will get a very good candidate out of one of the two, but that is in the final process now. The manager is making his final assessments and his recommendations. We expect that shortly. Vibrant Uptown is, as you all know, moving forward. The process has been challenged, but the contractor is moving forward much more rapidly right now. The current deadline, I believe, is November 30th, though that might slide a little bit because we want to make sure that they have time to protect the site for the pumpkin patch parade. Because you can imagine lots of children running around with open pits to be at that. So that process is moving forward. Let's see what else is going on. Thank you. Yes, we need an ESB representative for the comprehensive plan. Just one? Yes. All right. Each board is going to put one. Okay, so all the work, all for the CAP plan, guys. You get to pick one person to represent all that effort. And I don't know how you guys want to pick. I will refer completely to you. It's up to you guys.
I nominate Sean.
Oh, Megan, do you want me to facilitate this? There's a nomination on the floor.
I think we should ask Sean if Sean can do that.
I would like to understand. We have a sense of time commitments.
It's not like a whole other committee. It's more of there's like a focus group meeting at meetings of the members and things like that. But I think there's handful, so it's something like weekly, it's something monthly, it's really just, 3 months, 4 months. It's, I don't know your schedule, so I don't speak more and stuff. And that's probably my biggest, I guess, and what level of ability to shape the decision is this longer.
I suspect that you will find that the consultants we are working with have already defined this way. So it's more augmentation and helping support that vision. Clearly articulating the strategic goals that have been laid out. Beyond that. Sean said he'll do it quietly.
If Sean is up for the task, I second that nomination there. I think that's a good idea.
I third it.
I thought you should have held out and waited for bribes.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like that is every voting member. So, Sean, it is. And the other thing is that the ESB appointment, to replace Charlie, not going to rush it. Just trying to do the board realignment work. I want to see where that falls out before we do an appointment. I suspect unless money is or otherwise.
I'm sorry, I wanted to go back to the comprehensive plan. The first meeting is on June 24th at 6:30. And that one. I'll be able to do it.
So I'm holding off on appointing new ESB member till the standard appointment process. I'm not gonna try to appoint someone before, unless you guys have a meeting problem with that and need someone. I prefer to try to work through the existing committee and recognize that we might do this board reshuffling. I don't want to throw someone just to rearrange.
You talked more about board reshuffling, I've heard of it, but not.
Yeah, so all right, so the short of it is that we have 11 advisory boards, which is way more than the vast majority of municipalities in this region. And frankly, I think it's way more than this is my personal opinion. But more importantly, with 11, we don't dedicate enough capacity focus on the boards that are working, right? And again, as Abby will tell you, right? And I first came on, she's like, wow, a commissioner showed up, or something to that effect. Because commissioners often weren't even coming to board meetings, right? Because there's just so many, right? So I think the logic for me is that we want to bring boards together around key things that really are important, that deserve long-term focus. And a lot of these boards have just evolved over the last 40 years. So they got created for a specific reason. Like the Sports Advisory Board was created for turf. That's why it was created. Right. The parking board was there because there was a parking facility authority. There's no longer a parking facility authority. There's still a parking board. Right. So there's a lot of this just legacy infrastructure now organization that's out there that is very broad and like to create consolidation so we can really focus people's energy on things that really matter and also allow staff and commission to really focus in on areas and hope that we can get to 5. I hope that's where we can get to. So one example in my mind is we've got the traffic board and we've got a parking board. Those are 2 different modes of transportation or 2 different, movement, levels of movement for a car. But we don't have a board that's focused on sidewalks, right? So let's consolidate and create a mobility, right? That is an alignment that makes sense. So again, parks, sports, All right, let's see, Parks and Rec. Yeah, right, there's some of these logical consolidations, around some of these topics. I don't remember exactly where I came in with my recommendation, but I think that there is logic around consolidating ESB and EPC, the economic development. Because again, these are long-term topics, right? Sustainability is critical, but I don't want it hanging off the side. I want it as a core part of the discussion. So how do we bring these together into a structure that is going to, be more manageable, give more opportunity to teach new board members, right? How governance works, what the role is, what we expect of you, right? Making sure there's more structure around your actual purpose, right? I'm a firm believer. Focus on policy, right? That is something that we can do. Don't just sit around and complain about that, right? There are things that you can actually recommend. Look at budget, look at the CIP, right? These are things that I've done with you guys, but a lot of boards aren't necessarily focused in those ways. So how do we begin to create more structured standardization so that we get more, that board members get more out of it, but the municipality gets more out of it as well. So that's really kind of a high level. Obviously more kind of leadership, but that's kind of the key principles that I'm trying to hone in on. Because again, a lot of people that I'm here, but I don't know what I'm doing. Well, that's not fair to anybody. How do we create a more robust framework that actually has more meat in the process?
If you thought at all about having cross-board liaison, like actual structure?
No, I hadn't particularly, but it's a fair point. I will,
Like, depending on how those, and like, we've done a little bit with parks, but it's been quite ad hoc, and that's, right, so I think if you're looking to realign things, it might make sense to have one of the folks, have someone from them sit in on ESD/development meetings, and like there's nice overlaps there.
yeah, no, that's a great point. I will go back and pull that document up. That's something. We're still working on that. Again, it's a commission discussion right now. And it's generally being socialized. If we vote on, I hope we'll get something voted on this year, right? I'm president. I want to get it done this year. But what's the transition? I think that's still a question, right? Because again, I don't want to have a bunch of new people and then say, nope, sorry, you're done. Right. I want to, so if we have a 3-year transition, that's fine, as long as we have a very stable work forward. The other piece of this for me is, and I'm really curious with consultants from the comp plan thing, is that coming out of comp plan, it would be nice, again, we're going to have essentially a roadmap from the comp plan. So what boards, how do boards align with that roadmap? So that they have a stake in pushing things forward. Right. Again, for me, that it's about creating a shared story. Right. And these boards right now feel somewhat disconnected from this core process that the municipalities are pushing forward. It's like, how do we create more alignment? Knowing that those transitions take time, but again, get a better path going forward that people feel more engaged on.
I think that makes good sense. And, I've lived here probably longer than we thought we would stay. And the transportation, walking district thing just seems to get really punted around between municipality, the school district, the state. As far as who's responsible for, the safety, for making that really an opportunity for people to actually walk to work, to school. And, I think it's been lacking that there's been any one group that really carries that torch.
That's all I've got.
Any update on big streets?
Complete streets, we went through discussion session. I think there's general support. I think we just need to, commissioners have it in their packets now. So if they have comments or changes, haven't heard anything. So I expect we'll get it on the agenda for a vote. All right, Megan, back to you.
All right, I think that's everything on the agenda. Is that right, Bonnie? Did I miss anything?
I do not believe you did.
All right. Does anyone want to make a motion to end the meeting?
Quick announcement.
Yes.
The Parks Board, Arboretum, and the Nature Conservancy are holding a family activity day in Bird Park this Sunday. It's a free event where they'll be talking about the grant and doing some native tree tours, crafts with kids, some activities around the fire pit. The Parks Board, I think, will be there as they're, sponsoring this with the Nature Conservancy. But if you're interested, I think tours are like every 20 minutes, half an hour. They're trying to get as many people as they can to come out and learn about Bird Park. I'm still amazed of the residents that live here that have never actually been in Bird Park, even to the soccer field, but beyond that, to the trails, to know there's a little creek and, trails in there, and it's, pretty much our largest green space, I think, if we don't count twins. So that is at Bird Park Sunday, October 16th, from 1 to 4. Come, bring your families, say hi. Now I just heard-
Thanks, Jen.
And she moved to adjourn,
Second.
and Sean seconded.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.